Welcome to the Impact Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Beck, and we are excited to have you here for another episode. So, as I think about sales and I look at what's going on in the world around us, I'm just completely amazed sometimes how so many people out there look at what's happening online and the new technology that's available, the landing pages, all the different things that are out there related to selling. And they actually think that that process, what really falls under marketing, is considered sales. You know, the difference between sales and marketing and actually developing a relationship is something that seems to be a lost art in the world today. And I take note of this, as I look at what's going on with sales in a variety of different industries. And I talk about it with clients, different people that I speak to and interact with, prospects. And it's amazing to me how far we've come from some of the more traditional value-based sales techniques that have been tried, tested, and true and continue to work today. But because we live in such a fast-paced world and everybody wants to do everything faster, bigger, they want the shine to be more important than anything else. They really have lost touch with some of the more basic elements of professional selling. And today we're going to dig into that, not only in our initial segment, but we're also going to talk very, very specifically with our guest, who's going to be great. When you hear this segment, you're going to be blown away. Um, we're going to talk a lot about, what happens with many sales professionals that are out there, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're a sales professional selling for a company that you represent. What happens to a lot of them, and some of the things that are going to be shared later on in the episode really were surprising to me. I heard some of these things before, never quite as specific, and it just kind of blew me away. And I think when you're going to hear it, you're going to understand what I'm talking about. The world we live in today is so caught up in things happening fast and quickly, and we've lost touch of one of the most core elements of relationship selling, and that's really engaging people the right way, developing trust, really getting them to understand you and vice versa, and to position yourself as a true professional and trusted advisor that they can go to for whatever it is that you might be providing. And it seems like everywhere you turn, and certainly you don't have to go any further than just looking at your mobile phone, you're seeing, just a constant array of ads and things that market and pitch things to you. And very infrequently do people connect at the right level the way they should. So today we're going to be talking more about that. We're going to be digging into the importance of impact and having an impact on the prospects and clients that you work with. And most importantly, making sure you do things in a way that's comfortable for you. And one of the things you're going to find with our guest today is, he's written a new book that really is just a phenomenal resource for any sales professional or entrepreneur who's selling their own product or service. It's one of those must-haves in a sales library to really understand specifically about how to sell in a way that works for you. And we're going to dig into that in our next segment with our guest. But before we get there, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the world around us, how we need to look at sales, and most importantly, how we need to position ourselves as entrepreneurs and sales professionals. Look, there's a million and one resources out there for people to be able to get information. In fact, it's information overload out there. You can get so much information on sales, some of it good, some of it not so good, some of it horrible as it relates to the effort itself and exactly what it could do. Don't get caught up in the shiny object syndrome that a lot of these things can give you. Get back to the basics. And here's what I mean by that. Find yourself in a way where you could connect with people in a genuine, transparent, and human way, make meaningful connections, understand what their concerns, problems, and needs are, and then work hard to figure out ways of solving those problems. It really comes down to that. We get caught up in all of these other things going on related to the world around us, and we think that everything has to be bigger, faster. Sometimes those things are less meaningful or less engaging. And sometimes all it takes is just engaging somebody in a genuine way and look to solve their problems, even if it's just a partial solution, to be able to get them closer to where they want to go. And our guest today is going to talk a little bit about that, as well as the importance of, being memorable and standing out in the world we live today, but not in a flashy way, in a way that truly positions you as a trusted advisor and a servant to the clients that you're working with, something that helps you stand out. That's so important today in the marketplace, because so many people find themselves in a position where they buy into different marketing methodologies, changing this, changing that. And the fact is, it all comes back to one thing. It comes back to how well you can engage somebody and address or concern their individual needs or what they're looking for. And most importantly, make them feel good during the process. If you can do that and do it consistently, you'll be very successful in sales. If you struggle with that, if you're not genuine, if you're not real in how you do it, if you're trying to be something that you're not, you're probably going to struggle. If you're trying to follow a game plan that's just not your game plan and it doesn't feel right for you, it probably won't work the way you're looking for it to work. You have to stay true to yourself. You have to stay true to the person you are, the personality that you have. And most importantly, you need to make sure along the way that you're providing significant value and real impact for your clients. We call this the Impact Sales Podcast because we want to dig deep on the subject of impact and understand and explain exactly how you can have the right impact for the people that you work with. And what exactly does that mean? What does impact mean, right? There's so much talk about value. We'll talk about this later on in our next segment. There's so much talk about value in the world we live in that it's almost become watered down in the way people perceive the importance of a sales interaction. It's almost shrugged off or sniffed away because people don't look at value as significant enough anymore. And maybe it has to do with the fact that they can pick up their smartphone and find 1,000 other people that do what you do. Or maybe it's just the fact that, the times have changed and the game has changed along the way. But the truly elite, the people that are out there getting it done in a big way as sales professionals, they do what elite people have always done. They go farther than the average people. They do things more efficiently, more effectively, but most importantly, in a deeper and more, connecting way. They figure out a way of working with people and making those people remember them, feel passionately that it was a good experience working with them. And even more importantly, the really, really elite people, get them to a place where they look at them as their trusted advisor, the person that sits at the table with them and helps them make decisions and guides them on their journey, whatever it might be. And I think in the world we live in today, we all have to focus on not losing sight of that. We need to make sure that in our goal and our quest to reach our sales objectives, whether they're quotas for a company or individual objectives for our business, that we don't get caught up in changing who we are, that we stay true to ourselves, but most importantly, that we don't settle for average. We don't settle for just generating value. And I will tell you that without question, the people that are elite in professional selling, the ones that really stand out, the ones that are memorable, are the ones that go above and beyond, the ones that connect on a deeper level and make more of an impact on the prospects and clients they serve. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. Sometimes it's by asking the right questions, caring enough to dig deeper. Sometimes it's by under promising and over delivering, sometimes doing things that they never thought you'd be capable of doing to be able to help their business succeed, meaning the client. Or sometimes it's just being genuine, and so genuine in your interactions with people that they like you so much that they want to work with you. They want to come up with a way of working with you because you've taken things to that level. And no matter what category you fall in, or maybe you do all three very well, that is the mark of an elite sales professional or an elite entrepreneur who understands how to take those things to that level, how to have that type of an impact. So stay tuned for an amazing episode coming up here. This next segment with our guest is really just chock full of great information and insights and perspectives that you're really going to want to take notes for. You want to get yourself ready. Our next guest is an in-demand sales speaker on sales process and sales effectiveness. He's an advisor, strategist, consultant, and coach. He is a multiple best-selling author in the category of sales, including his very latest book, his brand new book called Sell Without Selling Out. You definitely want to pick this up. It's a keeper for sure in your library. Stay tuned. Coming up in the next segment, at the Impact Sales Podcast, our guest, Andy Paul. Stay tuned. Hi, this is Joe Beck with the Sales Activist. Thank you for listening to the Impact Sales Podcast. As you listen to our podcast, you're getting all kinds of best practices and tips and all the things that you need to be a successful sales professional or an entrepreneur selling professionally in the market today. But how do you put all those pieces together? How do they relate specifically to your situation, your business, your offering, or what it is that you're bringing to the world? Well, I'd like to help you do that. You could schedule a complimentary Impact Sales strategy session with me, Joe Beck, the Sales Activist, to talk more about what's going on with sales in your business, and more importantly, exactly what you could do to take it to the next level. You know what I'm talking about, the type of level where you're crushing your sales goals. If you're an entrepreneur, the type where you're meeting and exceeding your sales objectives and setting new levels of success for yourself. If you're struggling in sales, I'd like to help. Reach out to me and schedule this complimentary Impact Sales Strategy session. It would be my pleasure to talk with you more about what's going on with sales in your business and help you get on the right track. Don't miss this opportunity to help yourself and your business in a big way. I look forward to talking to you. Welcome back to the Impact Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Beck, and with me, he's an advisor, strategist, consultant, and coach. He is the author of multiple best-selling sales books that present fresh perspectives on the sales process, such as Amp Up Your Sales, Powerful Strategies that Move Customers to Make Fast, Favorable Decisions, and Zero Time Selling, 10 Essential Steps to Accelerate Every Company's Sales. And currently, author of the new book, Sell Without Selling Out, a guide to success on your own terms. He is a sought-after, in-demand sales speaker on sales process, sales effectiveness, sales strategy, and sales productivity. Welcome to the Impact Sales Podcast, Andy Paul. Andy, how are you today?
Joe, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on.
That's great. It's our pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. So, Andy, at the Impact Sales Podcast, I like to kick things off by starting with a very simple question. How did you get started in sales?
My first job in sales was selling women's shoes at JCPenney.
Okay.
So,
Women's shoes, huh?
Women's shoes, JCPenney. I was in high school, needed extra staff during the holiday season. So this was in Madison, Wisconsin. And yeah, back when JCPenney was the anchor store in every mall across America. And I don't recall how I ended up in women's shoes. I went and interviewed, but that's where I ended up. And yeah, that was my first sales job, if you will.
I love it. It's funny how many times I hear people when I ask that question, it comes out of nowhere, and they never started with the intention of starting off where they did, and it's amazing what it turns into. So
yeah, well, I don't think I didn't leave that job thinking, oh, I need a career in sales, but yeah, maybe that was foreshadowing what was to come.
It was a start, no doubt. So one of the things that we really highlight here on the podcast is that success leaves clues. And we really try to pay close attention to the people that are out there handling sales a certain way. And one of the things that we've noticed in today's marketplace, and perhaps you can weigh in on this, is, value-based sales techniques have seemed to sometimes take the backseat to what's going on in today's world with advanced technology and AI and all these different things that take the human aspect out of the sales process. A lot of that stuff, value-based selling and impact selling, have taken a backseat. What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that there are people who, would love to get salespeople out of the mix, right? Let's do all this, in an automated fashion. And the problem with that are the customers, despite what you hear from research firms saying, oh, buyers don't want to talk to salespeople anymore. The fact is, in very real terms, most buyers never want to talk to salespeople, right? But they do because they want somebody to help them accomplish a certain task, which is, hey, we've got this job that we've assigned to ourselves of making a purchase decision about this type of product or service. and we've gone this far, but we're sort of stuck. We need a different perspective. We need a different way to look at it to, help us see what we're missing. Well, that requires talking to a salesperson. What buyers
Mhm.
don't have time for are salespeople that can't help them get their job done.
Mm.
And so, as I write about in my book, if you're out there, uh, what I call selling out, which is as a salesperson, you're putting your own interest ahead of those of the buyers.
Mhm.
Yeah, they don't have time for you. What value are you adding to them with your salesy behaviors and manipulative behaviors? Uh, you're not. So, yeah, salespeople are going to be
Does.
around for a long time as long as we get our do our part, uphold our part of the bargain, which is, the buyer invests their time and attention in us. Do we give them
Mhm.
something of value in return for that?
Mm. That's excellent. And it's funny you mentioned that about salesy in chapter 5 of your book, Sell Without Selling Out. It references that. It talks a lot about,
Mhm.
how many times people are too salesy in that process. And somewhere along the way, and you hit the nail on the head, they're never going to replace the need for the salesperson, but so few and far between sales professionals, whether they're entrepreneurs or salespeople, really stand out in the eyes of the consumer anymore. They
Oh yeah.
don't. That number is very, very glaringly low. In fact, one of our previous guests shared with us that that number on average is somewhere between 10 to 15% of sales professionals are memorable. And
Yeah, I mean,
that's pretty telling.
there's a relatively new book out called "Strikingly Different Selling," written by a number of co-authors out of the
Hmm.
Franklin Covey universe. But they have a study they cite in there that, that in the mind of the buyers, this is surveying like maybe 10 or 15,000 uh, B2B buyers, quote unquote buyers, was 42% of people responded the salespeople are indistinguishable.
Wow.
So
42% indistinguishable.
yeah. And so, that's a problem.
Yeah, I would
But
say so.
indistinguishable means you're not memorable, which means, you weren't doing anything good for them, right? So,
Hmm.
getting back to the point you're sort of starting to make is the ability to connect with someone else on a human level has become increasingly important, I believe. As
Yeah.
more automation comes into the space, automation has the effect of making these buying experiences even more similar than they were. They're even less distinguishable than dealing with humans.
Hmm.
So I firmly believe, I write about this in the book, is that, and this is not new. I wrote about this in my first book, 10 years or so ago, is that the perceived differences between products are getting increasingly thin, right?
Mm.
And when that's the case, and when you're, marketplaces where there's literally dozens of competitors, what's the tiebreaker? Or the products are all the same.
Mm.
What's the tiebreaker? The tiebreaker is you, the seller.
Hmm.
It's the buyer's experience with you. So
Absolutely.
if that's the case, then the ability to connect with another human being and to build some level of rapport with them, you can call it a relationship if you want to. I call it a connection, but to have that connection, that's very important.
Hmm. No, no doubt. In fact, it's funny you said connection, and that's another one of the chapters in your book that's so on point. I read it a couple of times, and I'm like, this is exactly what people need to read. And the thing that I think people have lost touch in so many scenarios, whether they're entrepreneurs selling for themselves or whether they're a sales professional, is they've given up on what really should be the ultimate goal, which is to be a trusted advisor and resource to their client. And
Hmm.
instead of thinking about just the sale, focus on the relationship, whether that relationship is 5 minutes or 5 hours or 5 years. Focus on the relationship and be a trusted advisor. And
Hmm.
what are your thoughts on that? I know people throw around trusted advisor in a lot of different ways. What do you think of that phrase?
Well, I think it's an apt phrase, and it sort of go back to what I was talking about before. Is what do buyers need sellers for? Right?
Hmm.
Is these days we have access to a world of information just on our phones or a laptop, whatever device we're looking at to access the internet. Um, why do we need this third party to come in and help us with that if we have access
Hmm.
to all this information? And there's actually been studies done about this by some sociologists saying, look, you've may have heard of the concept of strong ties and weak ties.
Hmm.
And so people we work with closely, we have strong ties with. What happens with people you have in this, sort of organizational context, you have strong ties with, is you all know the same information.
Hmm.
And so one sociologist that's sort of famous for writing about it said, this you all know redundant information.
Hmm.
Well, if you're out trying to make a purchase decision, you're trying to solve a particular problem, you're trying to achieve a specific outcome, you have some idea of what those are, but you really are need the salespeople to come in as a trust advisor and say, well, look, actually the problem may be a little bit deeper than that or a little bit broader than that, and here's some insight. And so that's what you need the weak ties for, as sociologists
Yeah.
call somebody from the outside to come and give you these new perspectives.
Yeah.
That's what we
No,
do.
that's
And
absolutely
so,
true.
if we're not in a position of some level of trust, or let's call it trustworthiness, with the buyer, then they're not going to answer our questions that we need in order to learn things that are really important to them, that we can help them with.
Hmm.
And so that's, our insight's going to be useless without that context. So the trust really is at the heart of all of it. To be able to connect with someone, to be able to deploy your curiosity effectively, there has to be a level of trust there.
Hmm. Yeah, no doubt. One of the things that I've noticed is the people that really excel at that, the elite, so to speak, they kind of position themselves not only as a trusted advisor, but almost as if that they have a seat at the table in the decision making process for their clients. And I've
Mhm.
seen this happen where the relationship is so strong that that trusted advisor knows that the client won't make a decision without contacting them and saying, we need to do something in this arena and you're our guy or you're our person for this, and we need your input before we do anything. And like, it just epitomizes being that elite level trusted advisor. Like, it's almost like you're on their team and helping them with
Yeah,
those decisions.
no, absolutely. And I think that, yeah, especially we're doing with products with sort of longer term engagements and, a lot of repeat business. Like you said, if you're a solopreneur, you're an accountant, a lawyer, you would go down some professional service provider. Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Because again, it's is in the mind of the client and the customer, is they're going to come to you and they're going to invest their time and attention to you. Do they earn a return on that time and attention?
No.
If they don't, then they're going to stop giving it to you. So you're by default, you're not, or by definition, you're not that trusted advisor.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny. One of the things that it used to happen in the corporate environments that I was a part of for over the years, especially in the larger ones, when a client couldn't remember the name of their sales professional, you knew you had a problem. Like, that was one
You
of the
get a
first
problem.
questions. Like, do you
Well,
remember the name of your representative? No. Well, then that's a problem. You
that
know.
is a real problem. But I mean, you think about it, today's environment is so many people change jobs so quickly in sales, right? I mean, the turnover among account executives, I just saw some study from Bravado or one of the sales communities, it's like basically 11, 12 months.
Mm,
So presents a real challenge for an organization to say is, yeah, how do we maintain organizationally this position as a trusted advisor if the people actually delivering the work and are the are the place where the trust happens keep leaving?
yeah. Well, and that's I think that's certainly uh, a different conversation, but sales cultures and environments
Mhm.
play a role in that. But I think on an individual producer level, those individual trusted advisors, the people that are aspiring to be that, they have to kind of step outside of the bad environment or the bad culture and make
Mhm.
sure that they're the one that's the exception, kind of the beacon or bright light when
Oh,
other people
absolutely.
aren't doing it.
Absolutely. And that's one of the themes of my book is yeah, the subtitle book, A Guide to Success on Your Own Terms, is yeah, you as a salesperson, you have to decide what type of salesperson you're going to become and you
Yeah.
want to be. And that may change a little bit over time as you acquire more skills and more experience, but you need to have this vision in your mind of who you are and how you want
Hmm.
to be representing yourself to your buyers. And if you're asked to do things that are at odds with that, then you have to make a choice. You
Hmm.
either you push back and say, look, hold me accountable for the number, right? Because I think there's a better way to get it done that works better with me, that help me be more productive, or go find a situation that's a better fit for who you are. To the
Hmm.
culture point that you just made, lots of different companies out there, lots of great sales leaders out there creating great sales cultures. Find one of
Hmm.
those if where you're at isn't a fit.
Yeah, and I believe sometimes that works hand in hand with uh, the proper and enlightened leadership. If the leadership is enlightened and they get that point, and they believe in things like situational leadership, where they look at that person, and if they're at a certain level already, they might be that person that they say, "Look, here's the number. If you have a way that can get there, go forth and do it," versus here's
Mhm.
the way we feel you have to do it. And it's hard. It's a challenge sometimes in the environment to get people comfortable with that, especially from the leadership standpoint, because it
Oh,
it
absolutely.
makes leadership teams nervous.
Makes them very nervous because, hey, we've got a playbook. We know if we
Hmm.
execute the playbook, we're going to deliver a certain set of results. Now, those results may not be optimized by any stretch of the imagination,
Hmm.
but yeah. I mean, too many managers operate from this position of fear.
Yeah.
To your point, is if I don't do exactly, what's prescribed, if we're not getting people to do exactly what's laid out in our process, I'm at
Hmm.
risk.
Yeah.
And
Very true.
sales managers have that same obligation to say, it's your business. This is
Hmm.
one thing that that you just don't hear enough as much as you used to 15, 20, 30 years ago when I got started in sales. Yeah, my first manager said, "Look, this patch you have, this territory, which me was actually a line of businesses of I sold to construction industry,
Hmm.
within a geographic territory." But he said, "Hey, this is your business, right? We've got certain standards of how we sell, but within those standards, within that framework, have at it."
Hmm.
And it's much rarer that you hear that these days. I mean, there's much more emphasis on, yeah, this is our method, this is our process, execute that, rather than
Yeah.
saying, yeah, here's the framework of how we operate as a company. This is our culture of how we deal with our customers. Within these frameworks, go be the best you. And I'll help. What do I need to do to help you achieve that?
And I believe part of the deficiency in that, the gap, is that there's so few people deploying value-based selling and doing it the right way, building relationships, that gap is widening, and it's harder for them to find the people that are trustworthy enough to go out there and do it the right way outside
Hmm.
of the playbook. And you're right, it creates fear in the leadership team as they look at their teams and they realize these people are out there running around and they don't really know how they're doing certain things. So I can certainly relate to that.
Yeah. When I think to your point about value based selling, is I think and I try to, well, I deal with this specifically in the book, is this idea of values become so amorphous that,
Hmm.
and sort of a cliche, is that I think again we need to have a reset in the minds of sellers and managers in particular, is what constitutes value to a buyer. And
Hmm.
so what I define in the book is that value to a buyer is very simple. It's progress, meaning that as a result of an interaction, let's say you're going having a phone call with a buyer. If as a result of that phone call, the buyer is closer to making a decision than they were before the phone call, then it was valuable to them.
Hmm.
And if they didn't make progress as a result of that interaction could be an email, a voicemail, whatever time that you're demanding the customer give you some of their time and attention,
Hmm.
the net
Yep.
effect has to be that you've helped them move closer to making a decision, even a small amount, closer to making a
Hmm.
decision than it was beforehand.
Yep.
And if you can't state that about, said, a Zoom call, in-person meeting, whatever, then yeah, it had no value to the buyer.
Mm. One of the things that we talk about a lot with our brand, the sales activist, is that it seems like good salespeople will work right up into that value line. And then there's another line that we talk about called the impact line. And the impact line seems to be where all the elite cross. And the impact line is where it's not just the expression of here's what you get, here's what it costs, here's the value you receive. It's that next level interaction of what will this mean for your business? What will the impact be? What will this do for you personally? How does it make you
Mhm.
feel? It's the deepening of the relationship. Like, the old sales training methodology was don't ever talk past the sale. If somebody's ready to buy, let them buy. But I've learned that the elite, and what I've seen in the elite, they always tend to go farther because they know value is so easy to attain nowadays. As you said, 1,001 options with the touch of a phone. So they have to play at a higher level. Are you seeing that? Are you seeing people, the elite, going farther than they used to?
No, I just think they're going as far as they did before, and others are
The way
doing
they
less,
always have.
and others are doing less. Yeah, I think that's no, I think that good salespeople today are doing the same thing good salespeople have done, forever,
Hmm.
and is just as you describe is getting to the point where they truly understand what's most important to the buyer
Yeah.
and what in terms of the challenges they face and the outcomes they want to achieve, and then they work with the buyer to help them get that. It's not this persuasion driven. I'm selling hammer and everybody's a nail,
Yeah.
which is the way we train salespeople, right? Your
Over the
job is to go.
years. Yeah.
Your job is to persuade somebody to go buy your product. Well, if you
Hmm.
think your job is to persuade somebody to buy your product, you don't really care about this whole level of understanding thing because that's immaterial. Whether you understand them or not, your job is still to persuade them to buy your product.
Hmm.
And instead, sellers have to have this mindset that their job is really just to listen, understand what is really important to the buyer, then help them get that.
Hmm.
Well, then, yeah, the whole idea as well to
Mm.
listen, to really understand. I'm going to have to ask them great questions, ask great questions. I really need to build that connection first because unless I have the connection and I'm deemed trustworthy, I'm not going to get the depth of answer that I want from the buyer, right? I'll get the superficial answers they give everybody else, but they're not going to let me really stick my nose into their business unless I've earned that level of trust.
Hmm.
So it's all sort of connected right there.
Yeah. And I think, to your earlier point, if they don't do that, they fall into that category of the 48 or 42% that weren't memorable. Like, that the people don't even
Oh,
remember them because it's one of however many other options.
yeah. Well, and yes, I said, we're the difference. As salespeople, we're the ultimate difference.
Yeah.
And just look at any business. Look at sales training business, right? I mean, how many sales trainers are there in the United States?
A lot.
Thousands, right? Big companies and lots of individual, small, solopreneurs. Uh, yeah, everybody's sort of fighting for the same dollars. To say, how do you stand out in the crowd?
Hmm.
Well, fundamentally, it's not going to be your methodology per se. I mean, some of it might be you've got a unique perspective. Maybe that's interesting, but even that boils down to who you are, the type of seller you are.
No doubt about that. And unfortunately, so many times in today's world, people look at the technology and the advancements, and they think an amazing landing page or a funnel or this technology or that technology, and great numbers are sales. But the challenge is getting them to realize that somewhere that human interaction has to be correct, or it's just order taking and processing. It's not really a sale. It's
Yeah,
something that's a lot. There's no personality to it.
sure. And there's some situations where, hey, order taking's great. That's all. That's all the situation requires.
Sure.
Uh, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I mean, for a lot of B2B sales, there's more to it. And
Hmm.
you're not just building, or you're not just trying to connect with somebody purely for the purpose of a transaction. As you're trying to help them transform their business in some way. You're looking for a longer term engagement. So yeah, the person always going to come into it at some point.
Mm. Very, very, very true. Now, I know a lot of our listeners and followers, many of them are newer entrepreneurs who are selling for themselves, or
Mm,
sales professionals who are just really starting to work on their craft. So,
right.
whoop, excuse me, I lost my little earbud. This is real, folks. This stuff happens. So, one of the things that I like to ask people is, if you were to define the top two things that an entrepreneur or a sales professional should focus on for sales success, what would you define as your top two?
Well, I mean, there's sort of little different scenarios, right? If you're an entrepreneur, I mean, you may be having a new company, you're still really sort of trying to figure out what people are going to pay you for, oftentimes.
Mm,
So, yeah, having a lot of conversations up front and figuring out what you're going to focus on really becomes important.
Okay.
Some people say, "Oh, well, yeah, start with the focus." I, having led sales a number of startups and companies are raw, brand new products bringing to market. We took a little time to experiment and see and have a lot of different conversations. And sometimes it took
Mhm.
a little bit to figure out, oh, this is the sweet spot here.
The market
So
educated them over time.
yeah, but you only do that by going out and engaging and not
Mhm.
passively looking at research and so on and so forth. You have to go talk to customers, prospective
Mhm.
customers about that. So that's one. Yeah, I think for the budding entrepreneur is again a little bit different than the salesperson starting out is as an entrepreneur, you need to understand what it takes to sell your product, right?
Mhm.
Before you start hiring people. Because there's oftentimes this disconnect. I've worked in again a number of startups founded by technology founders who many were very good at this, but there were a couple that would just sort of yeah, salespeople were the necessary evil, and they just didn't understand how their
Mm.
product needed to be sold. And so I really encourage entrepreneurs is yeah, be the salesperson before you go hire somebody. Be
Mhm.
the salesperson, go talk to customers, understand what it takes to sell your product and why people are buying it. And then say, okay, now based on what I know about that, you'll be able to make a better decision about who you need to bring in to help you sell.
Mm.
Without that
It
experience, you really don't know.
That
And
is so true. That is so true. It's funny, that's actually where the name of our brand came from because we were looking for a brand name and we came up with the sales activist. And the reason is we believe that every business needs to have somebody that's an activist, truly passionate about sales in their business. Sometimes it's the entrepreneur, but sometimes the entrepreneur is not the best person to do it. They need to understand it, but maybe they need somebody else to be doing that for them.
yeah, but I say I'd make the case though that in all cases, when you get started, it is the entrepreneur is the best choice
It
because
it's their
why'd they start
baby.
the business? Well, why'd they start the business? Right? They got to be,
Mhm.
some level of passion about what they're doing, some, excitement, enthusiasm, and that will translate to the buyer.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not going to be. I mean, it's you get into this thing. It's like, especially with technical companies and people. Oh, these, this is an engineer. The founder's engineer. I've never sold anybody, and I can't persuade people to buy something they don't want to buy. And it's like, well, great, because that's not the job here, right?
Mhm.
The job is to go help somebody solve a problem. This is what you started the company to do. Oh yeah, I can do that. Okay, great, let's do that.
Yeah.
Um, they have to get out there and mix it up, and
Mhm.
no substitute for it. And
No.
then let's say once you've done that, then you can say, okay, now who do I need to hire? Because the
Mhm.
market's told me that this is the type of sale it's going to be, this type of customer we're going to sell to. What are the attributes we need in a salesperson or a sales leader at that point? Get that experience first. It was a great
Mhm.
story I read years ago, sort of this apocryphal tale about, um, how do you know what sort of person you're supposed to hire, right? The requirements. And the story is about this university that had this big open green space and they wanted to have it landscaped and make it more friendly to people on campus. So they hired this landscape architect and they embarked on this big project. And after 6 months, it was done, and they had the great unveiling. And here's this beautiful new space that had been landscaped. And the administrator said, "Well, where are the sidewalks? Because there are no sidewalks. Where are the sidewalks?" And the landscape architect said, "Well, we're going to wait and see where people walk for 6 months and then build the sidewalks there." And that's sort of what you want to do with, hiring salespeople is, if
Mhm.
you're an entrepreneur, is go see where the sidewalks need to be first, right? Talk to the customers, see what they
Wow,
need, and then hire people that can match that need.
that is a great, great story. Andy, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing that. So, before we wrap up, Andy, we really appreciate your time here. Let me ask you, how can
Sure.
people follow Andy Paul? What should they be looking at and following?
Well, connect with or follow me on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm very active there. So, yeah, joining the conversations we have. You can come to my website, andypaul.com. You can download a free chapter of my book. Um, We have a little assessment you can take there to sort of see, okay, on the spectrum
Ooh,
between,
assessments.
well, this is kind of a fun one. It's not super
Uh-huh.
scientific, but it's like if you assume look at a spectrum, on one end is selling out and the other end is selling in, as I describe in my book, where in the
Mhm.
spectrum do you sit between the two? And then you can buy my book any place you buy books, Amazon, online, in bookstores, at airports. It's all over the place.
That's awesome. I can highly recommend it. It's a great read. Andy Paul's Sell Without Selling Out, a guide to success on your own terms. Andy, thank you so much for taking this time with us today at the Impact Sales Podcast. Like we say at the Impact Sales Podcast, sell better and impact the world. Thank you, Andy.
Thanks, Joe.
This is Joe back with the Impact Sales Podcast, and wow, what a segment with Andy Paul. I'll tell you what, I'm sitting here just thinking through our conversation and going over the things that we were talking about, and I am still literally sitting here geeking out as a sales professional on some of the things that we were talking about. I know that sounds weird to some people, but when it's your chosen career path and you talk to people like Andy and you go through some of the things that we were talking about, it can't help but to give you a little bit of goosebumps. And the reason it does is because I truly believe that the individual people that go out there and sell the right way and create genuine relationships and develop relationships to a point that they can do business with the prospects and clients they serve, I truly believe that those people can change the world. And that includes all of you. So if you're sitting there on the other end of this podcast and you're listening in and you're trying to decide, is sales right for me? Or can I sell as an entrepreneur? Or am I going to be able to do all the things that I hear these other people talking about? The answer is yes, absolutely, you can. You don't have to be a sales geek like me where you get goosebumps talking about it, but you do need to take it seriously. And you certainly do need to make sure that you follow the success of other individuals. Success does leave clues, and there's plenty of opportunities out there for you to see how to take your sales to the next level. If you're struggling with sales, I'm going to tell you that there's a lot of very specific things that you can do to move forward in a big way. The first is continue to reach out for resources that can share good information with you. This podcast, our website, our social media, any place where you can get insights into professional selling, you should be absorbing all of that. But if it's not enough and you're still struggling, please reach out to us. We want to be a resource to you in the sales community, whether you're an entrepreneur or a sales professional. We want to be able to help. Look, there's absolutely no reason that anybody, no matter who you are, no matter what your background, anybody can be successful in selling. It's just a matter of dedication, working on your craft, and trying to take things to the next level every single day, working on it and trying to get better day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year. There's no secret to that level of success. It's about discipline. It's about staying focused and learning along the way. At the Sales Activist and the Impact Sales Podcast, we're focused on helping to bring quality content that not only makes you think, but makes you realize that, if they can do it, we can do it. And there's no question that you can. If we can be a resource for you at the Sales Activist or the Impact Sales Podcast to be able to help you take your sales to the next level, don't hesitate to reach out. You can connect with us on our digital business card by texting the word sales to the number 321-421-5213. That's sales to the number 321-421-5213. You can access our digital business card, all of our social media, as well as schedule an impact sales strategy session, which is a free opportunity for you to connect with us to talk about what's going on with sales in your business and maybe get some help and direction on how to take it to the next level. Don't miss this opportunity to get the help that you need. In the meantime, stay tuned to what's going on with the Impact Sales Podcast. We have a lot of great guests coming up. You don't want to miss the upcoming episodes. We had a great time today with Andy Paul, and I'm going to tell you the next guests coming up are going to impress you just as much. Don't miss this opportunity to get the tips and the tricks that you need to be successful in sales. They're easier than you think. Don't miss this opportunity to sell better and impact the world. This is Joe Beck with the Impact Sales Podcast. We'll see you soon.